Hello, and welcome to Shrink, the podcast for the mind. I'm Philippe and I talk to the people who want to have a better understanding of their issues with weight and body image. So today, I'm delving into a topic that I feel we've all wrestled with at some point in our life, and it's laziness. Laziness is something I hear about quite often from my clients. They feel like they are too lazy to make the changes that I would come up with, or to start exercising more, cooking in a different way. Anyway, they use that word lazy in a way which is very judgmental. And I know they're not lazy. Usually, for other stuff in their life, they're like doing very well. They're good at the business that they have. They're raising children. They're responsible for charities. I don't know, there's so many different examples. But when it comes to food and when it comes to changing their eating habits, they feel like they're too lazy to change that. And that's when I start helping them understand that it's not about being lazy, but it's something different. And laziness is a word loaded with judgment. It's often used to criticize or even shame people when they're perceived as not doing enough. Shame people or shame ourselves quite frequently, I must say. But what if I told you that laziness is rarely what it seems? That behind the label lies a complex web of psychology, emotion, and even unmet needs. So in this episode, we'll unpack the concept of laziness, examine, I don't know how you say it, why it happens, and challenge the myths that surround it. Along the way, we will explore some practical tools to reframe your relationship with motivation and rest. So, grab a cup of tea or coffee, sit back, or even lie down, and let's talk about laziness. Let's start with the basics. What is laziness? The word lazy is often used as a blanket term to describe inactivity or lack of effort. But if we dig deeper, it's clear that laziness is less about someone's character and more about context. Psychologically, laziness can be described as a state where a person avoids effort or action despite knowing that they have tasks or goals to achieve. And this avoidance can be due to a variety of factors, like physical exhaustion, emotional overwhelm, or lack of motivation. Talking about myself, for example, I wanted to record this podcast episode for the last 2 weeks, and I didn't do it. And I was thinking, well, am I lazy? Speaking about laziness. In fact, no, I wasn't lazy. I was probably tired. It's the end of the year, December, it's dark, it's cold. Also, I had other things going on, and I didn't find the right space or the right set of mind, let's say, to really tackle this topic. So I wasn't being lazy. I guess there was a bit of perfectionism as well, where I thought, well, if I talk about these things, it has to be perfect, which is ridiculous because perfectionism is not helping in any way anyone achieving anything. But then I thought, well, no, I'm not being lazy. It's probably not the right time. Probably I need to think a bit more about it. Probably I need to get my time organized in a different way. Maybe I need more rest, and maybe I've got to plan a moment when it would be better for me to record these episodes and not just think about it every day and think, oh, I should really do it today. So I wasn't being lazy. I was just not at the right place. It was not the right time. And once I understood that, I stopped blaming myself. I stopped feeling guilty. And I thought, okay, I'll do it whenever I feel like doing it. I'll do it. I'll record this episode whenever it's the right time for me. And here I am. Because here is the kicker. Laziness is often mislabeled. For example, when a child avoids doing homework, we might call them lazy. but maybe they're overwhelmed by the material, or maybe they're struggling with undiagnosed learning challenges, or simply burnout. Similarly, when adults procrastinate on a project at work, it's so easy to chalk it up to laziness. Yet, procrastination is often linked to fear of failure or perfectionism. So we have to accept the idea that laziness is more of a symptom than a diagnosis. It's a surface expression of deeper psychological dynamics. Let's debunk one myth while we're at it, the myth of the lazy person. We often assume laziness is an inherent trait, a flaw in someone's character. But psychological research doesn't support this. We're not born lazy. In reality, behaviors we label as lazy often stem from external or internal obstacles. Things like mental health struggles, lack of resources, or unclear goals. For example, depression can look like laziness to an outsider. Someone might struggle to get out of bed, not because they don't care, but because they're battling a lack of energy and motivation, a hallmark of depressive disorder. And I say that depression can look like laziness to an outsider, but it often looks like laziness to the person who's being depressed. They blame themselves for their laziness, what they call laziness, but in fact, they just burned out, or they're dealing with depression. They're not lazy. It's not only about how others perceive us when we're dealing with a depression or with a burnout. It's mainly, I think, how we perceive ourselves, how we judge ourselves, how we feel guilty for not doing more, for staying in bed for so many hours, or for staying on the sofa and eating things that, although we're not hungry, and watching stupid series on our laptop. I guess this is the trap that most of us fall in when we're not well and when we don't feel like doing anything. We just blame ourselves instead of thinking, what's going on with me? Why don't I have the energy to do the things that I usually like to do? I'm not going to blame myself and say I'm just lazy, because I know it's not what it is. It's about something else. In other cases, what looks like laziness could in fact be the result of an environment that discourages us from any effort. Maybe someone doesn't feel like their work is meaningful or valued. Maybe they're stuck in a cycle of survival where striving for long-term goals feels impossible. So they just go on day-to-day tasks. As we go deeper into this conversation, I want you to ask yourself, how often have I judged myself or others for being lazy? And how often have I stopped to ask why that behavior is happening? So now that I have redefined laziness, I'd like to explore its psychological roots. Why do people avoid effort, even when they have goals they want to achieve? So some people don't have goals that they want to achieve, and it makes things even more difficult. But sometimes we have goals that we want to achieve, things we want to do or need to do, and still we don't find the energy to do it. Let's talk about burnout. I think burnout is one of the biggest culprits behind behaviors labeled as laziness. Think of it as emotional and physical exhaustion that makes it hard to muster energy. Burnout often happens when people are overworked, overstressed, or feeling undervalued. If you've ever felt stuck, staring at a to-do list without the energy to start, you know exactly what I mean. Another one is the fear of failure. And this one is sneaky, I must say. When we fear we won't succeed, it's tempting to avoid trying altogether. After all, if you don't try, well, you can't fail. And psychologists call this handicapping behavior. It's not laziness, it's just self-protection, because you have this feeling that you're not going to make it. So what's the point of even starting it? And somehow, before recording this podcast episode, I had this fear of failure. I was thinking, is it going to be interesting? Are people interested in this topic? And So somehow, to a certain degree, I had this fear of failure. And then there is perfectionism. And here is the ironic twist. Perfectionists are often mistaken for lazy. Why? Well, because perfectionism can lead to procrastination. If you're obsessed with doing something perfectly, the thought of starting can feel overwhelming. Let's say you want to write a book, and you want it to be the perfect book. Like you want it to be a book which really describes in the best way ever possible the things that you want to talk about. Well, the chances that you are going to procrastinate are very big because, in fact, no book is perfect. And you have to accept that things won't be as good as you would like them to be sometimes. And just start doing it. And then maybe after a while, look at it and think, okay, can I improve it? So that's probably a better way than just having massive goals before you start, because this is very scary. And again, it probably incites you to stay in your sofa or go out for a drink instead of opening your laptop and start writing your book. A lack of purpose or lack of clarity can also make it difficult to start a project or to work at something which we really want to achieve. Imagine trying to navigate a maze without a map. Well, that's what life feels like when we lack clear goals or a sense of purpose. People who don't see a connection between their actions and their aspirations often feel unmotivated. And they're labeled as lazy because they just won't do the things they're supposed to do or expected to do. But it could also be that you're dealing with an emotional overwhelm. Emotions like anxiety, sadness, or frustration can really paralyze us. When we feel overwhelmed, it's hard to take action, even when we want to. So again, it's about doing things when it's the right time, when it's the right place. And then there is a big one, and it's the unmet needs. Sometimes, what looks like laziness is actually your body or your mind signaling that something is missing. Maybe you're sleep deprived, maybe you're hungry or in need of emotional support. Maybe you just need a break. I can't talk about laziness without addressing the cultural context or the cultural stigma around it. In many societies, especially in the Western ones, productivity is glorified. The more you do, the more valuable you're seen as. And this hustle culture, I would call it hustle culture, although it's difficult for me to pronounce, creates a toxic cycle. It's like rest becomes a taboo, and slowing down is equated with failure. But this mindset ignores the fact that humans aren't machines. We need rest, we need to recharge, reflect, and eventually grow. Interestingly, some cultures have a more balanced perspective. In Italy, for instance, there is a concept called dolce far niente, which means the sweetness of doing nothing. I really like that. It's about savoring life's quieter moments without guilt. Imagine how different life would feel if we embraced that philosophy in our countries. But instead, in many parts of the world, we stigmatize rest. Words like lazy, unmotivated, or even slacker are used as insults. And this stigma can lead to shame, which only deepens the cycle of inaction. And what I mean by that is that nobody has even been motivated to do something, to start something, if they feel like they're being lazy, if they feel like they're being unmotivated. And that's why I think that it's important to reframe laziness. Instead of seeing it as a flaw, what if we saw it as a signal or a message from your mind or body that something needs more attention? So here are a few ways to reframe laziness. Start by unpacking your emotions. What emotions are underlying your inaction? Are you afraid of failing? Are you overwhelmed by the task? Naming your emotions can help you address them. Then I would suggest that you set smaller goals. Sometimes we avoid tasks because they feel too big. So break them into smaller, manageable steps. And then, of course, check your energy levels. Are you tired, hungry, or burnout? If so, give yourself permission to rest. And remember, rest is productive. It's how you restore your ability to act. But also, if you're feeling unmotivated, reconnect with your purpose. Why does this task matter? What will it lead to? In my case, for example, when I have to record a new podcast episode, sometimes I delay it, I procrastinate. And then I ask myself, yeah, but why have I done it for a few years now? And I remember that why I started it and why it matters for me to do it. So please, keep in mind that rest isn't laziness. It's essential if you're resting. Allow yourself to enjoy it fully instead of feeling guilty. Because, as I often say to my clients, guilt is one of our worst enemies. It really is. And it has never helped someone changing their attitude, or it has never given them the energy they need to change something they're not happy with in their life. So, to wrap things up, I want to leave you with a challenge. The next time you or someone else is labeled as lazy, pause. Look deeper. Ask what might be causing the behavior. Laziness, as we've seen it today, is rarely the whole story. It's often a signal that something deeper is at play. And by reframing laziness and addressing its root causes, you can transform it from a source of shame into an opportunity for growth. Remember, you're not a machine, you're a human. And humans need rest, purpose, and compassion. Of course, if you start looking at laziness in a more, let's say, introspective way, you may come up with some questions for which you don't have the answers. So I don't want to make it sound like it's easy to change the way you see yourself and to address these things. It can take some time. I believe that it's probably a good idea in some cases to see a professional that can help you addressing these things. And it's really worth it. It's really worth it because it can change a lot of things in your life.